I'm Evan Koslof. Here's your Spectrum News in 90. Tensions between Minneapolis residents and federal immigration officers are still rising in the Twin Cities after the deadly shooting of Renee Good by an ICE agent 2 weeks ago. A new report shows that the Pentagon ordered about 1,500 active-duty U.S. soldiers to prepare for a possible deployment in Minnesota if the violence escalates. Governor Tim Walz also called up the National Guard for possible deployment. A new ruling from a federal judge says, among other things, that agents are not allowed to arrest peaceful protesters or stop people in their cars without cause. The judge's order says agents cannot use pepper spray or other non-lethal munitions on peaceful demonstrators. The judge says that this will stay in effect until the operation is over or when, quote, conditions change that it is no longer necessary. A congressional delegation is visiting Denmark and Greenland, working to calm concerns over the president's increasing fixation on taking over that country. President Trump imposing new tariffs on several European countries as leaders from the EU hold an emergency meeting in Brussels. The president imposed a 10% tariff on all goods from 8 countries starting on February 1st. The countries include Denmark, Germany, the United Kingdom, and France. President Trump says the tariffs will then jump to 25% in June unless an agreement to buy Greenland is reached. That's your Spectrum News in 90.
Starting a war or invading a NATO ally is unthinkable.
A congressional delegation visiting Denmark and Greenland, working to calm concerns over the president's increasing fixation on taking over that country. And with protests against the U.S. growing in Greenland, European Union leaders are holding an emergency meeting in Brussels today. But our big story at this hour is in Minneapolis, where protests rage on as U.S. Army troops from 2 battalions are on standby to move into Minneapolis, according to new reporting in the Washington Post. The killing of a mom in her SUV by an ICE agent causing unrelenting fury. Thank you for joining us on Spectrum News. I'm Evan Koslof. 2 political flashpoints colliding at the same time, and both of them leading to renewed tensions. Spectrum's Katie Streit joins me now with the latest. Katie, what can you tell us?
Well, Evan, the Army says the troops are not deployed, but they are on standby as protests continue to grow and emotions run high.
Another big story right now, President Donald Trump's push to annex Greenland. That's triggered protests like these within Greenland. And today, the European Union is holding an emergency meeting in Brussels following the president's announcement of tariffs against those who oppose the annexation. Some leaders calling it economic blackmail. As that goes on, a bipartisan delegation from Capitol Hill is reassuring Denmark and Greenland of their support. Jen Sullivan is tracking developments.
Crowd shouting Greenland is for Greenlanders Saturday as people in Greenland express outrage over the U.S.'s recent threats to take over the Nordic island.
And America's interest in Greenland goes back more than a century. In 1867, Secretary of State William Seward, fresh off of negotiating Alaska, explored buying Greenland from Denmark. But as you may remember from your high school history books, that purchase of Alaska was actually mocked at the time as Seward's folly, and ultimately Congress had no appetite to go after Greenland. Fast forward 40 plus years to the early 1910s, and once again, Greenland resurfaced as a point of interest. But in 1916, to secure the U.S. Virgin Islands, the U.S. government issued the Lansing Declaration, which recognized Danish sovereignty over Greenland and pledged not to pursue future claims. Then, in 1946, President Harry Truman offered Denmark $100 million in gold to secure strategic control, not to challenge the sovereignty of Denmark. While those documents were declassified in the 1970s, this story only came to light in 1991 when a Danish reporter came across the files. Sweeping tariffs announced by President Donald Trump have had big impacts on ports across the country, including the port of Long Beach, California. Coming up on Spectrum News, what workers are saying. If you're just joining us, here's a look at what you need to know. Tensions are still rising in the Twin Cities after the deadly shooting of Renee Good by an ICE agent 2 weeks ago. The Washington Post reporting 1,500 Army troops have been told to prepare for possible deployment to Minnesota. A congressional delegation is visiting Denmark and Greenland, working to calm concerns over the president's increasing fixation on taking over that country. And with protests against the U.S. growing in Greenland, European Union leaders are holding an emergency meeting in Brussels today. And that's what you need to know. As Nick Reiner sits in a jail cell accused of killing his parents, comedian Rob Reiner and photographer Michelle Singer Reiner were learning more about the years leading up to their murder. Nick was placed in a year-long mental health conservatorship in 2020, where the 32-year-old underwent involuntary psychiatric treatment in California. All that according to two people who spoke with the New York Times. His parents were found stabbed to death in their home in December. It's long been known that he suffered from mental illness. Nick Reiner will have his next court appearance in February. A big update for those of you with student loans. The Education Department is pausing plans to garnish wages of student loan borrowers in default. Also delayed the seizure of tax refunds and other federal benefits from those who have student loan debt. The collections were supposed to start this month. Education Secretary Linda McMahon says that this move will give them more time to restructure the student loan system. It's still unclear how long this pause will last. Into Virginia now, where Abigail Spanberger is spending her first full official day as governor, the first female leader of the Commonwealth. The Democrat has already signed 10 executive orders. That includes the repeal of an order signed by outgoing Governor Glenn Youngkin, a Republican, that made state law enforcement help federal agents. And two other historic inaugurations in Virginia to tell you about. Jay Jones is the first African-American elected as Virginia's Attorney General, and Ghazala Hashmi, the new Lieutenant Governor, is the first Muslim woman to serve in statewide office in U.S. history. All eyes are on the Supreme Court, where we're soon expecting a decision on whether President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs are legal. And as we await what the justices decide, ports across the country have been adapting to the unstable economic environment. That includes the second busiest port in the country, the Port of Long Beach in California, where we're getting a look into its business operations with Spectrum's Chase Beach. Coming up, she started farming when she was just 3 years old. And now as a 5th grader, she's teaching other young people the tricks of her trade. Just ahead, we'll introduce you to the country's youngest farmer. Day one of the NFL divisional round did not disappoint. The Denver Broncos took the Buffalo Bills to overtime before kicking a game-winning field goal to win 33-30. But the celebration was pretty bittersweet. Quarterback Bo Nix suffered a season-ending ankle injury in the second-to-last play of the game. The Broncos now move on to the AFC Championship, where the Broncos are going to face the winner of the matchup between the Houston Texans and this anchor's favorite team, the New England Patriots. Go Pats. The kickoff is set for 3 p.m. Eastern. Meanwhile, in the NFC, the Seattle Seahawks delivered a beatdown to the San Francisco 49ers. They dominated the game, winning by a score of 41-6, keeping the high-powered 49ers offense out of the end zone all game. The Seahawks now move to the NFC Championship, where they'll face the winner of today's game between the Chicago Bears and the Los Angeles Rams. Kickoff is set for 6:30 Eastern. Tonight's game between the Bears and the Rams is at Soldier Field in Chicago, where weather is always a factor, and we're expecting some really frigid temperatures out there. Let's bring in Spectrum's meteorologist Scott Dean. Scott, I won't ask your predictions on the score, but I will ask for the game time forecast as well as the snow chances across the country. Scott, what are you tracking?
Well, I tell you what, it's a slam dunk forecast. It is going to be cold. We're talking about temperatures in the teens as we go through game time. Understand that there's another football game going on in Foxborough. How about that one? Well, it looks like it's going to be cold as well.
All right, well, hopefully that advantages my Patriots, but we'll have to see about that. Scott Dean, thank you so much for your time.
You betcha.
She's changing the planet, one seed at a time, teaching young people in food deserts how to grow their own fruits and vegetables. And she's only in 5th grade. Our Chris Welch introduces us to the country's youngest farmer. No doubt college sports look entirely different than they did even 5 years ago. Athletes can now profit on their name, image, and likeness. And in Congress, there's now a push to bring order to some of the chaos. But it's hit a roadblock, as Spectrum News Washington reporter Reuben Jones explains. And attention, all chocolate lovers out there, Spring and Mulberry has expanded its recall of chocolate bars for possible salmonella contamination. The FDA says the recall now consists of more flavors. In addition to mint leaf, they now include Earl Grey, lavender rose, mango chili, mixed berry, mulberry fennel, pecan date, and pure dark minis. I'm hungry now. The chocolate bars have been sold online and at retailers nationwide since September of last year. Fortunately, there have not been any reports of illnesses. And another recall, this time due to a fire risk. Over 300,000 mini refrigerators sold under the Frigid Air brand name are being recalled. Electrical components could short circuit and cause a fire. The fridges were sold exclusively at Target. There have already been 6 reports of fires. If you have one, you should obviously stop using it and register for a refund. Just getting your W-2s or 1099s? Well, there are some big changes to your taxes this year. President Donald Trump's tax and spending law from July, referred to as the Big Beautiful Bill, set some new tax provisions and made changes to others. Experts say that the bill adjusted limits on state and local taxes.
The old law was a $10,000 cap. Now you can get anywhere from $10,000 to $40,000 in 2025.
Big change. And for qualifying children, the child tax credit is $200 more this year. Plus, there's now the so-called Trump accounts for kids born after 2024. The easiest way to get the $1,000 account is to file Form 4547 with your taxes this year. The IRS starts accepting filings January 26th. The U.S. Army is joining forces with U.S. ski and snowboard teams. Coming up on Spectrum News, we hit the slopes with the 10th Mountain Division and learn why the U.S. military tried to turn soldiers into skiers ahead of World War II. I'm Evan Koslof. Thank you for watching. Your Spectrum News in 90 is coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.